Greetings, everyone. Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. And I wanted to do a review on a knife that's finding itself in my pocket more days than not. And that's this little guy. This is the Booz Blade Smoke Mini. And I love this knife. This is a great knife. And it's become one of my favorites in my collection. And in fact, one of my favorites in my everyday carry. And I thought I would just do a little review to share that with you. So let's talk about it a little bit before we get underway into specs and the more formal review. But so the Booz Blade Smoke. So Booz Blades, William Booz out of Kansas City. He's got this cool logo there. Knife maker, makes some really great designs. Knives include, the Arrow, the Hound, and then the big brother of this, the Smoke, the non-mini Smoke. So yeah, just some really, really cool designs out there. And in particular, this knife is interesting in the sense that it's made by We Knives over in China, but you purchase it directly through the Booz Blade website. So sorry, there's a little gunk there on the blade. You can see I actually use this thing. But yeah, so you purchase it directly through the Booz website. So it's kind of similar to the Ferrum Forge Proline series as well, which makes it kind of fun and interesting. But yeah, so you get all the benefits of We manufacturing, as well as the fantastic design by Mr. Booz. And there you go. So let's go ahead and get underway. So let's talk about, let's do a quick spec check here on this particular knife, and then we'll go into a review. We'll do a classic review today, so we'll talk blade, we'll talk action, we'll talk scales and hardware, and then we'll talk carry. So we've got a blade length here of 3.2 inches. We've got a handle length of 3.8 inches. There you go. Which gives us an overall tip to tail of 7 inches and a weight of 1.78 ounces. Now that actually sneaks it just under one of the, lightweight champions of the world. That's right, the Benchmade Bug Out. And you can see they're pretty close in terms of size as well. So let's just get into some comparisons while we're here. So we've got the Benchmade Bug Out up here, as I mentioned, being bested by the Mini Smoke here in weight by just a handful of ounces. You've got handful of ounces, tenths of ounces, I guess. You've got a Bestech Swordfish there, so pretty good size. You've got a Rat number 1 by Ontario, so you can see that. And how about just a standard Swiss Army knife? So there you go. That gives you a pretty good sense of the size of this little knife. And it is little. It's certainly really, it's narrow, it's compact, it's kind of everything you'd want in a little everyday carry like this. At least it's something it's a lot of the things I like in an everyday carry. So there you go. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk blade, shall we? So here we've got a flat ground, sort of stonewash finished blade. It's 20 CV, so CPM 20 CV, so really high-end steel. I don't know if there's the marking. I knew it was in a cool spot. So he puts the marking right there, which is pretty neat. And then apart from his logo, that's the only other marking on the blade. So a very sterile blade, but also a really attractive blade with an obviously extremely well done choil, grind, very, very slicey, really thin behind the edge. Just a great blade. Super slicey. It's a little steak knife looky, right? Looks, but that's okay. It's not quite as dramatic as its older brother, the Smoke, which is a little bit bigger. So yeah, it's got, they actually did go back and revisit this hole here, I understand, to give it a little more option. I am not the greatest with finger flicking. There you go. So to make it a little easier to finger flick than I think even the original is. So there you go. So yeah, that's about, you've got this nice little bit of jimping here on the blade. It's very mild. Not by any stretch of the imagination is it, overly aggressive or anything like that. So yeah, you just have a really nice looking pointy, you've got some flat, you got a belly, you got a little, bit of a tip there, very pointy. Robust, not overly robust, but not overly thin either. So yeah, just a really well thought out blade, in my view, and a great slicer. So let's talk action. That's kind of one of the funnest parts of this. So we've got a front flipper here, and everybody likes a front flipper. At least I do. I think they're really fun. And this one is no exception. It's got a great front flipping action. That's something Mr. Booz does really well. He's really dialed in, not only the, kind of how, and they did revisit this apparently as well. They kind of adjusted this flipper tab a little bit to make it a bit more accessible or easier to use. And then he also does this little cutout here, which makes it really nice. So when you're flipping this out, I'll try to do it in slow motion. Your thumb has contact on it the whole time. So you're not getting bumped off by the top of the scales here or anything with this cutout, and then you just sort of naturally land right there onto the scales. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty dynamic front flipping action, and I love it. I mean, on a fidget factor standpoint, good grief. I mean, this knife's crazy. I mean, sometimes I just sit around and play with this knife because it's so darn fun. And we, of course, figured out how to dial it in with a great detent and a lockup. Yeah, it's not the biggest lockup. I mean, maybe 10% there maybe is what we're looking at. And then you do see you've got a lock bar insert and over travel stop, all good things. But yeah, so am I worried about that lockup? Not in the slightest. This thing is rock solid, has been since day one, no issues there. So yeah, great action, really fun. It's not, in fact, if you're not careful, this thing, not only is it so slicey, but it's light, and if you're not watching it, you'll take a nick out of yourself if you're not paying attention to what you're doing with your fingers while you're closing this thing. Is it the most drop shutty? If you give it a little flick, it's pretty drop shutty. It's such a light blade and such a light knife that it's not really what it's designed to do. I mean, it's hyper smooth. Certainly it's, running on ball bearings. Everything that you'd, expect it to be. But yeah, so there you go. So let's talk handles, scales, and hardware. So scales here, we've got all titanium scales, kind of in this, stonewash, sort of bead blasted titanium gray with blue hardware. Really well done. It's beautiful. I mean, it's all chamfered extremely well. No sharp spots. Nothing to worry about there. Really like the pivot, which obviously means it's not a free spinning pivot, which is great. Just that color of blue. There's a blacked out version of this one as well. I really gravitated towards the blue and the gray, but there you go. So yeah, I think this is a really, I think the scales are done really, really well. Hardware wise, and again, so you got this blue anodized hardware. The backspacer I love. You got this sort of floating effect to the backspacer, which is really neat. I actually didn't anticipate that, and sort of was surprised when I got it out of the box. I really like that. And you've got a really good pocket clip here. It's springy, but no hot spots. We can talk about that, I guess, in carry, but yeah, I mean, just done really, really well. Very little to complain about here as it relates to hardware and scales. I mean, this is just a really good knife. You can see everything lines up flush. There's no, you're obviously not touching the tip because you've got this piece that comes all the way up, but you wouldn't anyways. There's no chance of getting sliced here in the back. So, which again, and I've talked about that before, is something that can be difficult when you're doing these really thin profile blades. So, and then the cutout here, so you can kind of see the blade when it's in there. I think that's really neat. It's sort of empty otherwise, but yeah, just a great, both from an artistic standpoint, I think, as well as, artistic design standpoint, as well as functionality standpoint. So there you go. So let's talk carry. So from a carry standpoint, kind of hard to knock it really in any sort of way. I mean, it's a thin little, almost like a pen. Gosh, I mean, here's a machine era classic. I mean, you're not you're not getting much. It's just like carrying a an everyday carry pen practically, except it's a knife. So yeah, so I mean, from a carry standpoint, no complaints here at all. Not the deepest carry of all, and I'll show you here. And could that have been improved? Maybe. So yeah, it's not really a deep carry by any standpoint, but I think the nature of what, how they sort of contoured the scales and just the overall design of the knife, I'm not sure how you could have done that without it starting to look a little bit wonky. So yeah, I don't have any real gripe there. And like I said, because it's so kind of tastefully done, it could be really anything in your pocket, not necessarily a knife. So yeah, so from an ergo standpoint, it fits my hand really well. I mean, I don't have the biggest hands ever, so 4-finger grip for me, no problem. You can get up here a little bit if you're careful. Not designed as a finger choil at all, but if you do want to choke up, you certainly could do this for sort of detail work and whatnot. No problem there. But again, that's not really what that's designed for. So if you're careful, you can. But overall, in this traditional grip here, no problems. And I have no hot spots for my hand at all. The pocket clip just melts right into my hand. So just really no problems there at all. So overall, what do I think about this? Well, I think you get a sense that I like this knife a lot. It's one of my favorite knives. I carry it quite a bit. I think it's not only extremely attractive, but very well made. There were a couple delays, I think, after you'd ordered this and sort of the shipments coming from China. I have to say, William Booz did a really good job of keeping people up to date on where things were, kind of when to expect shipments, all that kind of stuff. So I appreciated that a lot. You weren't sort of just wondering where your money went. And this is a $220 knife, so that is a lot of money for a very small pocket knife, but I think it's a small pocket knife that's not only well executed and beautifully designed, but also with top-notch materials. So I have a real hard time kind of knocking it there. Would I like to see it cheaper? Well, sure. I mean, and I think you can make an argument that there's a gripe on the fact that it's just kind of sort of hard to get these things, but he's making them. He's doing them kind of, I think, as well as he can. That was something that plagued the smoke. I always kind of liked the smoke and never was able to get my hands on one. Even on the secondary market, as soon as they'd come up, boy, they'd just disappear. So when this came out, when I heard that he was doing these mini ones, which I think, frankly, was going to be more in line with something I was interested in anyways, I was really excited, and I waited until the second they went live and then jumped right in on them. And then, as it turns out, you actually had more time. They were for sale for a little while. They are currently, I think, all sold out. But yeah, will there be future batches? I don't know. I hope so, because it's a really great knife, and I hope it's one that he continues to make so that folks can have a chance to enjoy this, because it's a really fun knife. And if you do see one on the secondary market or have an option to pick one up, go ahead. I recommend you do so if this is your style of something to do. And I'll try that finger flick again. It's not, ooh, look at me, 2 times in one video. I'm really actually not very good at that, so it's kind of fun. So there you go, a little testament to the design there. But yeah, great knife, love it a lot. I think it's pretty interesting that it sneaks under the bug out in weight, especially since all titanium, and I mean, it's definitely smaller, so I guess you could expect that. But geez, it's really at 1.78 ounces. That's pretty darn well done. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. If you own one, if you owned a mini smoke, if you own some of the other knives he's got out there, the Hound or the Arrow or any of those. Just kind of your feelings in general. Love to talk to you all in the comments. It's a lot of fun. Great knife, one of my favorites. If you follow me on Instagram at MildManneredEDC, I'm sure you'll see plenty of pictures of this, because it's something I carry quite a bit. So with that, thanks for checking out the review. Really appreciate it. Be safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.